Hey, what's up, Nashville? This is Bo Beach. This is the Free Speech Podcast. We are going to discuss recent news, Nashville commercial real estate, politics, culture, and even a little sports. We're going to do so in an authentic style, a casual style, like you would sitting around a table with your buddies. That's what this podcast is all about. So let's get into it. Our first story of the day. How much does it actually cost to live in the great state of Tennessee? Right? A study was recently done trying to calculate how much money one would need to earn to be able to afford each different state in the country. And it turns out Nashville is one of the most affordable states to live in. So the 42nd most expensive state to live in the country, right? That means there are 41 other states more expensive to live in than Tennessee. A single working adult would need to make about $86,000 to be able to afford Tennessee. Two adults and two children household, you're going to need to bring in $195,000 to afford to live in our state. The number one most expensive state in the country, a blue state, of course, Massachusetts. An individual would need to make $116,000 there, or a household would need to make over $300,000 to afford the bad weather, the bad governance, and the high taxation, which is Massachusetts. In fact, 10 of the 11 most expensive states are blue states. The other being Maryland, which I would say at best is purple. Their governor, or former governor that is, Larry Hogan, couldn't be any less impressive. Probably the least impressive Republican governor in the country. The cheapest state to live in, West Virginia, you only need to make $79,000 as an individual, or $189,000 as a household. So our first story of the day: Tennessee is relatively inexpensive when compared to all the other states in our current union. Let's move on. Nashville, year over year, has experienced the third biggest drop in apartment rents in the entire country. So if we look at the metro areas throughout the country, Nashville had the third largest drop in apartment rents. It actually went down 5.9% year over year. The biggest drop happened in Seattle, Washington, a city that I will soon visit for my daughter's national championship soccer tournament. Number 2 is Austin, Texas. And number 3 is Nashville. The median rent in Nashville today, $1,599 per month. The explanation for the drop in the rents here in Nashville is a building boom, right? So a lot of apartments came online at the same time. Those pushed rents down 6%. I think that's very manageable when you consider all of the long-term benefits one has from owning well-located commercial real estate in Nashville. Let's move on. The Morgan Wallen bar sign. The approval, right? So everything you do in a commercial real estate development, including signage, has an approval process. Well, Morgan Wallen's bar, which is not even owned by Morgan Wallen, right? It's a license agreement with a very reputable bar restaurant group. They actually voted down, the geniuses at the council in Nashville voted down Morgan Wallen's bar sign as retribution for what they see as racial remarks that the singer made, and also in response to a recent issue where my man threw a chair off the roof on Broadway. And, this is the only political topic we're going to discuss on today's show. I'll tell you, I am very worn out on the state of our political discourse in this country. I've said it before, but I think this is a low point in my 42 years of life. I've never been less impressed with our government employees than I am right now, especially at the federal level. I've never experienced a more ridiculous, more useless president than the president Joe Biden, who I think is going to go down as the worst president in the last 100 years, pulling ahead of Jimmy Carter, who people realize was a terrible president, but at least thought was a good person, right? No one thinks Joe Biden is a good person, and certainly no one thinks Joe Biden has been a good president, right? And everything they've done, the Democrats, in their relentless, ruthless attempts to remain in power has really bummed me out. It's hard for me to talk about. I've taken a social media break. I'm sick of reading about it. I'm really at a point where I am just disgusted by the woke government morons that somehow have reached the pinnacle of power in this country, in the city, less so in the state, but also federally, which is our biggest problem. I just don't understand how anyone can be rooting on the ongoing damage that is occurring in this country. And I've said it before on previous shows. It really makes me want to think through how we dissolve this union of states. We need to get back to a place where the state you live in is the most important choice you make, right? 50 states, 50 different styles of living. The federal government needs to be removed from the equation, or at least substantially neutered and shrunk in size, scope, and cost. I think it's unlikely that we're going to really chop the federal government by 80% like we need to do. I think it's more likely that one could actually negotiate a dissolution of our current union of states. I think that might be an easier out. And given the terrible financial condition that our country is in, and how poor the prospects are for the future, I would say it's a great time to get off this sinking ship. If the red states could really band together, form their own union with their own currency, right, with their own federal government, I think that would be the wisest possible thing we can possibly do. And I know that sounds extreme, but we live in this state of existence, that is, whereby the Democrats are ruthlessly trying to hold on to power at any cost, whereby the Republicans, which are supposed to keep them in check, are constantly just kind of taking this high road and expecting it all to pass. And it's just not working. The Democrats are steamrolling the Republicans. The Democrats are much more effective and more ruthless politicians than the Republicans are. The Republicans clearly have better ideas and are better at actually governing, but that doesn't mean anything if you don't have the balls to do something about some of these things, if you don't have the balls to stand up to your mortal enemy who will do anything to remain in power. I just don't see how we continue down this perilous, depressing path. I don't know how it's going to play out with Morgan Wallen's bar sign. I imagine someone will get involved and kind of shake the wokeness out of this council. But it's just one more example that the Democrats will use any lever of power they possibly can to punish their political adversaries, even at the city level, even for sign permits. How absolutely pathetic and unbecoming of Nashville that really is. But that's it, y'all. That's all I got for politics in me today. I just can't do it. Let's move on. 60% of Nashville residents think growth is bad and making things worse. This is a sentiment that is increasingly being felt across Tennessee. This stop the growth sentiment, which I absolutely hate. It is short-sighted. This not in my backyard stuff. And we're going to build on some of these ideas on today's show because I'm fearful of this anti-growth movement that I'm seeing even in Republican areas. The best example is Sumner County, where you've got a group of Republicans calling themselves constitutional Republicans that are pushing a stop the growth stance. They're using their positions of power to really stop new development in Sumner County. So we've got Republicans actively working against business, actively working against progress. And that's a pretty scary thing. You know, Republicans should know better. I mean, obviously, as we develop our communities, we should do so in a way that makes sense for the community. But this idea that all new development, all growth is bad and we need to immediately stop everything in its tracks, it's just so silly. And it's so bad for the business that I'm in, the commercial real estate business. I've done a lot of work in Sumner County over the last few years. I'm marketing multiple assets for sale in Sumner County now. I will tell you I am one of the most active commercial real estate brokers in Sumner County, as a matter of fact. And, you know, I guess that's all fine and good if you don't plan to develop new buildings in Sumner County, because those existing buildings just keep going up and up in value. They become harder and harder to acquire for everyone that lives there. Everything's going to get more and more expensive. If we don't increase supply and demand remains constant or grows, which is absolutely what's going to happen. I mean, you're seeing demand coming from Davidson County for properties in Sumner County because they've been priced out of Davidson County. So not only are the folks in Sumner County competing with each other for those commercial real estate assets, now they're also competing from those folks that would prefer to be in Davidson County but can't afford it. So the prices in Sumner County are going to continue to go up. And if we don't bring more supply online, the prices are going to get out of hand for the average Joe, and they're going to be priced out of that marketplace. I don't understand how that is a positive thing for anyone, right? I mean, I just don't get it, and I'm disappointed that it's the Republicans that are putting forth this stop the growth stance. Developers will avoid any municipality that has stated they are interested in stopping the growth, right? And once developers really walk away from a community because of the local government and how burdensome it is very hard to turn that spigot back on later. In Williamson County, we're seeing a similar sentiment, right? I live in Williamson County. There's ongoing talk of defunding Williamson Inc., whose primary existence is to attract new businesses to Williamson County, which they've been absolutely outstanding at over the years. The local municipalities are now considering whether or not to re-up the contract with Williamson Inc. And we're going to sort that out. But again, it's another example of these communities trying to stop the growth. There are so many metro areas across the country that would do anything to grow, right? Grow, grow, grow. And it's very, very hard for many of these states and metro areas to do so. We are fortunately in a very high demand state, and many of our communities are very much in demand as well. So we're kind of gotten spoiled child syndrome, in my opinion, whereby all of these places that have really benefited from the investment and from growth and are wonderful places to live and work, they've got this spoiled child syndrome whereby they are trying to put the brakes on. They've just decided that, oh, okay, now is enough. Now is enough. Let's pump the brakes. Let's make it harder for business to move here. Let's make it harder for real estate developers. Let's slow everything down, make it so burdensome that people don't want to do business here anymore. I just don't understand that. I'm very disappointed in that as well. I mean, I'm just not a real defender of any of our government agencies. I really don't think that our elected officials very often make the right decisions. I think that we really should have as little government as humanly possible and let the free market decide these things. And I think we would all be better off because of it. So it's not only the Democrats that I'm disgusted with. I'm also increasingly disgusted with some of the local Republicans that are stopping the growth in our local communities. Terrible for me and my business. Not good for the residents of those communities, even though they're too short-sighted to see it. Let's keep moving. Cracker Barrel. So Cracker Barrel just hired a new CEO, which has come out and created an initiative to kind of turn it around, right? So Cracker Barrel has gone through some difficult times lately, right? But before we get into it, did you know that Cracker Barrel is actually headquartered in Lebanon? It is the 11th largest public company in all of Nashville. They actually have 660 locations in 44 different states. They also own the fast casual brand Maple Street Biscuit Company, which I've yet to try. We do have a few here locally. I just haven't made my way there. I'd like to see what that looks like. But the three initiatives that the new CEO is pushing to kind of right the ship at Cracker Barrel. Number one, adding new menu items. Okay. Number two, updating pricing. That means adjusting prices up, but also down for some menu items. And number three, the most difficult of all of those, is remodeling stores, right? So Cracker Barrel has a very unique look. I'm not even sure how you would describe it. Almost like cabin-like, old and cabin-like. They're going to be remodeling stores to update all of their 660 locations over time, of course. Very difficult thing to do at scale and costly, of course. So Cracker Barrel is actively trying to reposition their business for the future, hired a new CEO to do so, the 11th largest public company in all of Nashville, so we have to wish them well in those projects. Let's keep moving. The nation's largest Dairy Queen franchise, known as 14 Foods, moved its headquarters from Minneapolis to Franklin a few years ago. They own 245 locations in 13 states. They've just now opened the first Dairy Queen in Franklin in 20 years. It's open very near the Franklin Rec Center on Hillsborough Road. That I understand is recently opened or is opening this week perhaps. I would tell you Dairy Queen has a special place in my heart. As a young man, it was my first ever real job as like an employee. I was a cook at Dairy Queen. And as a matter of fact, the little town that I lived in, I only worked there because that's where all the cool kids worked. All the pretty girls and the cool kids worked at Dairy Queen. So I got a job there. I actually got fired because I refused to clean the bathrooms. I was young and dumb and just was uncomfortable cleaning other people's feces from toilets. And I didn't really need the job. I didn't really need the money. And I just was hard-headed. And I refused to clean bathrooms. And eventually, I just didn't get put on the schedule anymore. I got fired from my first ever job at Dairy Queen. Let's keep moving. A developer of a high-end car condo community, right? A commercial condo that you own to display your expensive cars, right? Has given up on Tennessee, found it was too burdensome to add a location here. And I can tell you, I know this deal pretty intimately. They were targeting 20 acres in Nolensville a few years ago. And I was actually involved in this deal to some extent. After that deal fell apart, they really jerked them around, whereby they went in front of the municipality. They were working through all the approvals one needs to start a project of that magnitude. And they just kept putting them off and putting them off and putting them off. And they just waited them out. They just didn't want the project, so they waited them out until they went away. Those are some of the nasty tricks that municipalities play. I will tell you that Nolensville is one of the most difficult municipalities in all of Middle Tennessee. many developers won't even look at Nolensville because of the mismanagement they have at the city level. I recently had a deal there that we had, I can't remember all the details now, but we had assembled something like 13 different properties, land deal, and it would have been the biggest mixed-use development in the history of Nolensville, right? It would have changed the face of Nolensville. Nolensville always says they want to be more like Franklin, right? Well, we would have given them this big, beautiful mixed-use development. It probably would have been, by the time it was all done, $150, $200 million project, right? Right now, the land isn't being used for anything except for some crummy houses, right? So you've got crummy houses or a $250 million mixed-use development with some of the most high-profile developers in the area. And Nolensville just would not cooperate, and eventually that deal died on the vine as well. The land that we were going to build this mixed-use development on, 20 acres of it was previously spoken for by this high-end car condo community, right? After they gave up, we put that second deal together, and we eventually gave up on that. But I do like this concept, right? And I want to share it with you because it's interesting. On that 20 acres, they plan to develop 160 to 175 car condos, plus a 14,000 square foot social club with event space and maintenance garages, right? Imagine that 20 acres of high-end car condos was a 14,000 square foot social club event space. It would have been awesome. And instead, you've just got farmland that's just sitting there. Congratulations, Nolensville, on your infinite wisdom. They've since turned their sights on Tampa. They gave up on Nolensville, they gave up on Tennessee, and are now focused on growing their business in Florida, starting with Tampa, where they've acquired 200 acres. On their 200 acres, they're also including a performance track where you can actually race these cars. Some of the garages, the car condo garages, trading for over $1 million per unit. There are 238 units in that development. This is the development they chose to proceed with instead of Nolensville. 238 units that at their lowest are $500,000. They went all the way up to $2.4 million. All of those units almost sold out. There's also a separate fee structure to use the track. $100,000 up front to get a membership fee to use the track, and $6,000 per year thereafter. Note that these memberships for the track are not available to the public, only to those 238 unit owners. They upgraded their facility 40,000 square feet of corporate event space, which they believe to be their main business, right? So after they sell all of those condo units, the ongoing business is actually coming from that event space, that 40,000 square foot event space, where they've got high profile businesses coming and bringing their employees for all their different activities. They also decided to do a $2 million resort pool as part of this development. The total project cost $140 million. What a impressive use. What a impressive people that are going to be associated with these car condo garages. This would have been an outstanding project for Nolensville, and Nolensville screwed it up. So just like we're discussing, as soon as you get a municipality that's known for being difficult to work with, people are absolutely going to avoid it. That's what's happening in Nolensville today. This developer took their money and spent $140 million for a beautiful project in Tampa, Florida, and now they plan to build out other similar projects around Florida, giving no consideration to Tennessee. That is the damage that our elected officials do to us. Let's keep moving. A California firm buys a soon-to-be high-vacancy downtown tower for $84.5 million. 2023 was the lowest year in 10 years for commercial real estate closings. So 2023, we had fewer commercial real estate transactions than we have in the last 10 years, right? So this is a very high profile deal for downtown. This buyer also owns 2 Metro Center buildings, including one in Franklin. The buyer was asked, why choose Nashville? Why now? Why spend $84.5 million on a trophy office tower in the heart of downtown Nashville when you know you've got some big vacancies coming up? What motivated you to do this? And the response was, well, Nashville has a very high quality of life, a low relative cost of living, a talent base, and most importantly, this is where our workforce wants to live, right? This is where people want to be. And if you are an employer, it's wise for you to locate in places where people actually want to live. That makes life easier, right? So businesses are coming to Nashville because the workforce wants to be in Nashville. Now, why specifically are you choosing to buy what's called Truist Plaza, right? One, it was a great location in their opinion, not far from 5th and Broadway, not far off of Broadway itself. They think that is a great location, very high quality of construction. They think the office market here locally has already found its bottom and is working its way back up. They're planning to invest $10 million to reposition the building with amenities so that they are able to backfill the space that they have coming vacant. Keep in mind, this is 345,000 square feet of office space with a Panera on the ground floor. So now you've got 2 big tenants leaving, right? You've got creative artists who have already announced they are relocating to Nashville Yards, which is poaching a lot of the biggest, most high-profile tenants downtown. You've also got a number of floors occupied by Amazon, who's got their own buildings coming out of the ground. So you've got creative artists moving out, and you've got Amazon also moving out. Those are known issues, and this buyer acquired this property knowing that was coming down the pipe. So their solution to that is invest $10 million in an upgraded amenity package for tenants and then backfill those spaces accordingly. Let's talk about one other office deal before we close out today's show. It's a similar idea. It's a similar situation. The Fifth Third Center is also for sale downtown, with a number of expected vacancies coming soon, including Fifth Third Bank itself, which calls the tower its current headquarters. They actually signed a 20-year lease for 2 full floors. That lease will soon be rolling over, and they are looking to relocate. This is the 3rd largest office building in all of Nashville at 650,000 square feet. Sony Music is also relocating to Music Row. Sony Music to Music Row, that makes sense. This is part of a larger trend, not only of large office users getting out of the downtown core, right? Moving to Germantown, moving to Music Row, moving to Williamson County, right? They're getting out of the entertainment center, which is the downtown core, and getting to some of these outlying areas which are less crazy, right? But what people I don't think are fully understanding quite yet is some of the largest users of office space downtown are banks. And these banks collectively are all kind of choosing to leave, right? So we're seeing a lot of changes happening in the downtown core in relation to office space. And as these tenants are getting set to really vacate huge blocks of space, the current owners are choosing to sell and not be the ones responsible for backfilling those spaces. So I don't think we're going to have any real issues related to big blocks of vacancy in the downtown core for very long. As a matter of fact, you'll hear some of these guys that are buying into the downtown core, like the Truist Plaza deal, and they'll tell you that they don't think it's a location issue. They think it's a quality of product issue, right? Whereby they don't think the existing building can really compete with some of the new buildings that are coming out of the ground elsewhere. So they think it's less about location and more about the quality of the building. And that's why they're investing that $10 million to kind of reposition Truist Plaza. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I think that, if you're going to ask if you're going to ask employees to commute to the office, I think that employee is going to prefer a commute that is short and easy rather than a commute that's long and hard and happens to be in this really cool touristy area that people get excited about. If you're driving down there every day to work, your 9 to 5, I'm not sure being in the heart of the tourist district is really what moves the needle for you. And I think what's happening is some of the large employers are trying to give their employees what they want, which is easier access to their workplace with fewer problems, less congestion, less homeless people, less drunks. It makes perfect sense to me. So we're going to skip sports today. We'll pick back up on the sports next week. I'll give you an update on where Nashville SC sits. I'll give you an update on where we are in the NBA playoffs. I absolutely despise baseball, and I will not be giving you any baseball updates. We're kind of in a weird place over the summer where there's not a whole lot of interesting sports going on. So we're just going to leave that out of today's show. So we were off last week because of the holiday. I just got back from vacation in Pensacola, Florida, which I thought was excellent. I'd never been there before. It's 45 minutes away from 30A, which is where everybody from Williamson County decides to go. I will tell you, the best kept secret in the Florida Panhandle is Pensacola. And I would much prefer to be going to Pensacola Beach than 30A any day of the week. And if you need a resort recommendation, because we're resort people, I've got 4 children, it makes it easy just to have everything right on a large campus. The Portofino Island Resort in Pensacola Beach, Florida was absolutely outstanding. I give it 5 stars. How many stars are you supposed to get? I'll give it 6. I give you 100 out of 100 rating. They really did a nice job, and we'll be going back soon. So it's good to be back. It's good to be through the holidays. It's good that the commercial real estate market seems to be ticking up after a pause of about 6 weeks where things got really slow. So life is good, y'all. I hope you all are well. Please check back in next week for another episode of Free Speech Podcast.